Jesus' name. It feels so good to be. I'm glad I know it's me. It feels so good to be alive. Yeah. It feels good. So good. It feels good. So good. It feels good. So good. So good. It feels good. So good. Feels so good. So good to be loved. Amen. Hey, Brenda Brown, Atlanta,
Yes.
Georgia.
Yes.
You're here this weekend with us.
Yes.
You came in for this gathering.
Yes.
And I remember this morning is National Friends and Family Day.
Yes.
Brenda, you told me the story of how you met Pastor Andre Crouch. You worked as his
Manager.
and you also worked as manager for
Delta Airlines.
and also for.
Bell South.
But you worked, how did you go about meeting the Reverend Andre Crouch?
When I was 17 years old, I had gotten some tumors. Then when I was 22, my doctor told me that they was going to have to take out my pelvic, my bladder, half of my colon, and my womb because the tumors were infused with those organs, and they could not separate them. He said I would probably never have kids because the tumors would abort the babies. So I got saved, but I didn't receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and I had no power to live it. So when I was 24, the doctor said, we got to do this surgery or you're going to die. So I threw my Bible in the nightstand drawer, and I went out and tried to have babies, which I do have some in heaven. I got mad at God, but I didn't know I was mad at God. But for 4 years, from the time I was 24 to 28, I was out. I come home 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I had albums with Andre Crouch, a bunch of albums, and Jimmy Swaggart. They would drop on the turntable all night for 4 years. And I didn't know that they were ministering to my spirit. So when I was 28, I ended up in the hospital February, and then I was back in the hospital in August. So the doctor said, we got to do this surgery, you're going to die. By then, I had went to 9 different doctors over those four-year period. I went to 9 different doctors. They all told me there's nothing we can do for you. So in 78, I had to have that surgery. So I was laying in bed at midnight, and I started crying. And I looked up at the ceiling, and I said, God, if you're real, give me one more chance. If you're real, don't let them take nothing out of me if you're real. And I was crying. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know how to believe God. The next morning, the doctor came at 5 o'clock. They came to take me down. I got hysterical. They gave me a shot to calm me down. He said, I tell you what, Brenda, I'm going to try something new on you. I'm going to cut you open, and I'm going to see if I can cut the tumors out one by one because you're so young. I said, okay. So they took me down, and I was gone. I was out. It was like 6 o'clock. I woke up at midnight, and my mom and dad was there, and I asked them, did I have my organs and stuff? And they said, we don't know. We haven't seen the doctor. But anyway, he came in. He said, sure, you have everything. But he did not tell me for 2 months later what had happened during the surgery. He said, I'd never do that surgery again. He said, we cut the tumors out one by one. When we got to the last tumor, we cut a main artery. Excuse me. Blood started squirting out like a water fountain. So for 5 hours, the doctors worked on me, and they couldn't stop the hemorrhaging. They lost me 10 times. They got a flat line, so they said she's a vegetable, she's brain dead. And the blood was squirting out all over the floor. They was giving me blood for 5 hours. And my daddy stood outside the operating room door. He walked and he prayed for 5 hours. He did not even go to the bathroom. So they lost me, and then when they got a final flat line after 5 hours, and the surgeon said, man, she gone, let her go. If you bring her back, she's going to be a vegetable. She brain dead already, and said, just let her go, and we can't stop the blood. It was just straight out. So my doctor said no, and they got up. All the surgeons, the anesthesiologists, and the nurses got up, and they walked out of the operating room. They left me in there. And my doctor started crying. Excuse me.
You were flatlined.
I was flatlined for about 10 minutes when they walked out, and the blood was just all over the place. And the doctor started crying. And when he started crying, he said, all of a sudden, I said, beep, 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 beep. Hemorrhaging stopped. It stopped. I didn't see a white light. I didn't go through no tunnels. But I heard Andre Crouch music. Jesus is the answer for the world today. Above him, there's no other. Jesus is the way. God got the glory out of that. And then, so 2 months later, I gave my life to the Lord. And I got filled with the Holy Spirit speaking in tongues. And I told God I would live for you and I would serve you for the rest of my life because I would have went to hell. And then I said, I want to meet that man. I couldn't find him anywhere. My sister got saved a year later and her boyfriend. 26 years later, I met him. He came, my best friend, husband is a musician. He met him, but he didn't know my testimony. And Andre came in for a trumpet award, and I had to retire, and I was working at Delta at the time. And when he came, when I looked up, and they were there, and she said, Brenda, you want to meet Andre Crouch? She knew my testimony. I said, yes. So we waited, and when he came up that escalator, I was there. I grabbed his hand, and I got on my hands and knees, and I kissed his hand. And I said, because of you and your music. And he was like, and I gave him my testimony. He started crying. So when he got ready to go, it was like, I didn't see him anymore but one time, but I was off Monday and Tuesday, and so that Tuesday, he was leaving. So I called my girlfriend all night, all day to Monday, trying to figure out how can I see him off at the airport. She said, you have no reason to be there. I said, but I would never see him again on this side of eternity. It took 26 years to see him. She said, don't go to the airport. I said, I have a badge. I can go down and get his itinerary and come back. She said, don't go to the airport. That's trickery. So all night I was calling her. The next morning, I went to bed. The next morning, his assistant called Debbie and got my number. And Debbie called and said, Andre Crouch, I want you to see him off at the airport. So they called, and I saw him off at the airport.